download a copy of the presentation slides and other helpful resources, just navigate to the bottom of the page. Throughout the program, you can rate the session and share feedback on the insights provided. To submit your rating, locate the Rate Session link below the player. A box will open for you to select 1 to 5 hearts. Please note that 5 hearts is the top rating. Share your feedback on the insights provided in the Leave Further Feedback box and click Send. This webinar is being recorded. You can watch this presentation again and find
It's been quite a ride lately with AI, up and up we go. And the question is, can we still get higher, or should we fear that what goes up must come down at some point? Now, to answer these and other questions, we often refer to our very own roller coaster ride, also known as the hype cycle, which in the case of AI, as you can see here, is a rather densely populated hype cycle with many trends. You will also notice that here in orange, GenAI is already past the peak of inflated expectations. Thankfully, you may say, people are becoming more realistic again about GenAI, realizing that yet again, this technology, in this case, GenAI, is of course not a miracle cure. It has its benefits, but also its limitations. Now, the good news is that there are many trends on this hype cycle that aim to improve the characteristics, amongst others, the reliability of GenAI. Still, other trends here are already paving the way for what is already a next generation of AI. Now, in this webinar, we're going to explore a selection of trends that we think are the most important for you from an enterprise perspective in the coming year. And to organize our thinking a little bit, we have clustered them in a number of interacting themes, as we call them, right? The first one is to increase the value, the impact of AI on our organizations. The second theme, where many trends are related to, is to broaden the applicability of AI, to make AI more actionable, as we will see. And then last but not least, going together with the other tools, if we want to improve the value, if we want to make AI more actionable, then we also better make sure that we improve AI's trustworthiness. That's what we're going to look at in this webinar, and the individual trends that belong to each of those themes. So without further ado, let's have a look at the first theme. Right, this is about trends related to improving the impact of AI on our organizations, to turn the promise of AI into reality, which is not a given. In many of our recent surveys, we see the same pattern over and over again, that many of you are struggling to really create value from AI, which is why this is such an important theme in the coming year. And one of the ways of improving or of increasing that value impact is the topic of the first trend that we're going to talk about, and that is what we call human first AI. It's basically an approach to AI that recognizes that there is no artificial intelligence without human intelligence, right? And this is true at many levels, right? First and foremost, it's that humans are needed to create the content to create AI with, right? We still need to write documents, create videos, and what have you to train future generations of AI. Now, you may say, why we're not using AI itself for that? Well, that may be true to a certain extent, but over time that will degrade the performance of AI. So humans are still needed, at the very least, to provide the much needed training input for AI. But it's also true in many other ways, right? For example, we want that in order to implement, to engineer AI, we need people, right? AI is not going to materialize spontaneously. So either yourself, your own organization, or your partners need to recruit people, to make AI happen, to ideate, to design, to implement, to operate, to deploy, to monitor, to govern AI. All of that needs to be done by people, right? So this is where the, there's a growing number of roles emerging and also existing already, where we see which people we're going to need to implement AI in our organizations. Um, the other thing that relates to human first AI is about what we call AI literacy. This is about recognizing that AI can greatly benefit from people having sufficient knowledge and skills related to AI. And importantly, that should not be limited to the experts, right, that are doing the more technical work, but also to other groups, amongst others, your senior management, your executives. They too, in the 21st century, need to learn about AI, what it is, what it can mean for your organization, but also what it is not, and what its limitations and risks are, right? So this is also important to manage expectations. But all in all, clearly we see in our research that also educating people like the users of your AI solutions really is a no regret investment. So that's a little bit about AI literacy. Still, another aspect of this human first approach to AI is to think carefully about how AI should work together with humans, right? Depending on the task, depending on the complexity of the task, the available time, the risk level of the task, we want to vary the extent to which humans are doing things and AI is doing things. So this is about what we call the levels of augmentation, the ways AI and humans work together. And as you can see here, it's a spectrum that goes from level one, where humans are doing most of the work, all the way to level seven, where we mandate AI to do things more autonomously, and everything in between. Now, the key message is here is that to improve the value from AI, we need to think carefully about how we design our systems, right? It depends on the task, which level of augmentation makes sense. And that will empower people, right? People will, if you think about that more carefully, it means that people will understand and will work with AI systems more effectively. That's a little bit about human first AI, but there are also many other trends that we're going to talk about. One of those trends is what we call AI for decision intelligence. This is a trend where we use AI to improve decision making in our organizations. But it's, well, maybe the essence can be characterized with this image, right? So on the left-hand side, we have the use of AI without decision intelligence. So this is also known as the shotgun approach, right? This is where we basically use AI in a more sort of general purpose manner, where we offer a tool to people in our organization, say, here is AI, you can use it for many different use cases, which is fine, right? This general use of AI. However, in general, it's we leave it to the people in our organization to figure out where to apply it in the most effective manner. So on the one hand, it means it can be applied broadly. On the other hand, on average, the impact of AI as a consequence tends to be smaller. The other approach on the right-hand side is where we start applying this discipline that I will explain in a minute, that we call decision intelligence. And the essence of that approach is that we focus AI much more precisely on our target, on what we would like to achieve by applying AI. This is also known as the sniper approach. So let me show you three examples of how that works in practice, right? So for example, we see that the use of AI in, for instance, healthcare on the left-hand side can be greatly improved by not by offering just, say, a general chatbot for medical people working in a hospital, for example, which can be useful again, but it's not really helping them to make better decisions. Well, maybe a little bit, depending on them, right? Depending on their talent to ask the right questions. So instead, what the approach here is to really focus on a particular use case, like analyzing patient data and to detect anomalies, for example, and then and doing that in real time, alerting medical staff if something out of the ordinary is happening, and then using perhaps GenAI to explain that to whoever is using the system. So this is a much more targeted use, and a similar use case we see in the middle here, where we talk about augmentation, meaning that we're not only using AI to offer some insight, but also to make suggestions to a user. In this example, a human call center agent is being helped by an AI system that is using an LLM, a large language model, in real time to analyze the sentiment of the conversation that is happening, and then using a knowledge graph to to suggest certain actions that the human call center agent can take by saying something, asking something, making an offer, whatever makes sense in that context, right? So that's the second form. Again, AI not offered as a general tool, but really focused on a particular decision, in this case, how to respond to certain customer sentiments. And then the third level is where we even go further, where AI is not making a suggestion only, but also is making the decision itself, right? So this, in this example, AI is being used to optimize the settings of the wind turbines, right? By constantly monitoring weather conditions and then making predictions, what is the best way of configuring the turbines to maximize the energy output. Now, three totally different examples, but what they have in common is what we call decision intelligence. It's about focusing AI, the use of AI on specific decisions rather than using it as a general purpose technique. So that's not easy, but there's good news because there is this what we call new emerging software category known as decision intelligence platforms. It's a software category that people can use to implement uh, solutions to support, augment, or automate decisions, like the ones you just saw, right? Now, the essence of a decision intelligence platform is that it brings together multiple flavors of AI and analytics, from conventional business intelligence and visualization all the way to agents and GenAI or optimization algorithms, whatever is needed, depending on the type of the decision that you are supporting, augmenting, or automating. So, in essence, these decision intelligence platforms, as you see in the middle, make life easier, or at least that's what they promise, for your people to integrate these different techniques together, right? Rather than having a separate tool for generating prediction and then using a separate rule engine to, you know, to draw some conclusion, and then still using a separate gen AI tool to, I don't know, transform that into an explanation for a human decision maker, perhaps provide some context. You know, it's just an example of how these things could work together. But rather than using separate tools, these platforms bring that all together in a more cohesive environment, making the integration less of a challenge. Of course, in all cases, it goes without saying almost, supported by a proper foundation of data. Now, that's decision intelligence platforms, and in fact, we see that they have so much traction in the market that and already next year we expect that most larger companies apply decision intelligence practices. Already today, we see great traction in, for instance, life science and financial services industry, in retail, and other industries as well. So that's a little bit about decision intelligence to improve the impact, the value we can create from AI. Now let's move on to the second theme, which is about making AI more actionable. The reason why this is a theme is because we don't want to just use AI to generate predictions or generate a text or generate a nice looking video. That's all great, don't get me wrong, that's all useful. But why stop there? Why not also use AI for other use cases where AI perhaps can help to automate things even further than today? That's what this theme is about. And one of the biggest trends at the moment, by far, right, in the current market is, of course, the trend of AI agents. AI agents are basically software entities, and the definition is here for your reading. But the essence of agents is that they basically try to move digital technology, including but not limited to the use of AI, to a higher level of agency, meaning that we want our systems to be more adaptive to changing circumstances and our systems able to deal with more dynamics, more complex tasks, and not break down if something out of the ordinary is going on. Right? So that is the most important value that agents bring to the table, if you like, and that is to to improve the capability of systems to deal with that complexity, to deal with the changing circumstances that we all have to deal with. So that's agents. Well, agents can work alone. Yeah, they typically interact with one of us, a user, a human, and then they, under the hood, they may use, but not necessarily, by the way, but they may use a large language model and perhaps something else like a guardrail. We will talk about that later, what guardrails. But and then in turn, they basically this LLM, at least if we use an LLM, we can decompose the question from the user into one or multiple actions that are needed to execute on the request of the user, right? So, and then we can invoke other applications through APIs or tools, as they're also known, which is one way, right? But there are also many other ways of how we can implement AI agents, right? They can also work together. Um, and then they, maybe there's an orchestrator that coordinate, that breaks down the task that is given by the user into subtasks and then delegates them to other agents who maybe specialize in the execution of that particular subtask and may utilize other techniques, right? So this is a big thing to remember, by the way, that in the current market, it seems like LLMs and agents are always need to go hand in hand. But agents can also be implemented without LLMs. It's something to keep in mind when you start implementing this. But anyway, the point is that agents can play many roles. Now, from a business perspective, it means that agents basically help to move the needle of automation even further. They help to further catalyze digitization, right? Uh, there are many, in fact, countless examples where agents may play a role. Whatever, the world is full of tasks and processes that may benefit from automation. One example I find very interesting is the middle one here. This is from an Italian insurance company that most insurance companies, including them, already started to automate their claims processing, their claims handling for years, for decades already sometimes. So the use of agents here is meant to also deal with those claims that before were hard to automate, right? So the standard claims, the relatively predictable claim handling was already automated, right? That's nothing new. But what agents are adding is to also start automating the more complex claims that may be different every time. Maybe there's something out of the ordinary, right? Like maybe there's a need for fraud investigation. Maybe there is need for specialized medical care or for some repair service, right? It depends on the context. So this is where agents can play a big role to move this needle of automation even further. That's the asset. You can implement AI agents in many ways. Here are a few examples, no recommendation intended, to be sure. So you can create your own agents with your own technical people, but increasingly, I should say, there are also many vendors out there, enterprise application vendors in particular, that are, adding AI agents to their existing applications, like your ERP, your CRM, your whatever vendor. They all are in the process or have already embedded AI agents in their offering for those tasks that before could not be automated, but now are becoming more automatable by applying agent technology. Now, be aware though of what we call agent washing, right? This is the the tendency of some vendors, not these, I'm not, but others that because there is so much hype and enthusiasm in the market about agents, they have a tendency to relabel some of their existing offerings that are actually more conventional automation or even RPA, robotic process automation, as if there are agent solutions. So be aware of that. There's a little bit of opportunism in the market, of course. Anyway, that's a little bit about agents, and we expect that because of all of this, 1 and 3 applications will include agentic AI in a few years from now. What else can we say about making AI more actionable? Well, that brings us to yet another trend for the coming year to keep an eye on. A bit more experimental, but it's known as embodied AI. And in a nutshell, embodied AI is about basically the AI we need to power a next generation of virtual avatars and physical robots. The principles apply to both kinds of entities, if you like. Now, the idea here is that AI, as we know it today, is often, something abstract, right? A model that lives high up in the clouds and is very remote from all the complexity and the messiness of the real world. So embodied AI, in essence, is about bringing AI down to earth, literally almost, right? So to give you one example of that, despite the enormous progress that we have seen in AI in the past years and actually also decades, still today it's very hard to create, I don't know, a self-driving vehicle that is really truly self-driving in all circumstances, right? Or to give you another example shown here, it's really difficult still today to create a robot that can pick an apple from a tree without damaging the apple, without damaging the tree, and not missing the apples because it couldn't see them, right? So this may sound like something trivial for the average human, but for AI, it's still a big challenge. It's also, I think, it's also a healthy thing to realize that AI, especially when it comes to practical things, still has a long way to go. But embodied AI aims to bring us further down that road by taking more the actual conditions into account, the virtual physical environment, the sensors, the constraints of the embodiment in which the AI lives. And AI is actually, this trend actually also relates and depends on other trends, like, for example, edge AI, which is about deploying AI on smaller devices instead of having to have a connection with the internet, right? Or this is also about improving the so-called reasoning capabilities of AI. Now, you may argue if it's really reasoning. I don't think so. But maybe you've heard of the recent announcements or rumors around OpenAI's O3, which is one of their latest model, which is not out there yet, but um, allegedly it has much better reasoning capabilities, or perhaps should we say pattern recognition capabilities than its predecessors. But it's still a long way to go before AI really has true reasoning capabilities, we believe. Another related trend is about emotion AI. Sounds a bit scary or creepy, perhaps, but this is about AI that is able, more in social context, to perceive human emotions more accurately and also vice versa, to express emotions through facial expressions or the use of a certain language. So emotion AI is another related trend. And then lately, and I will combine causal AI with physics informed and first principles AI. This is the kind of AI that where we represent our knowledge about the world without having to learn that from data. Because, as we all know, if we use the example of the apple, for example, if an apple, if we let go of an apple, it falls down, right? On Earth, at least, thanks to the law of gravity, as Sir Newton a long time already discovered. Now, why would we ask AI? Why would we train AI by showing 100, 1,000 videos of apples falling down before it finally learns indirectly that there is something that makes apple falling down? Why not inject AI directly with this causal or scientific engineering or common sense knowledge that we already have, being human, right? So this is an approach to AI where we're not only relying on data, but also our existing knowledge and inject that into AI to make AI more practical and also more robust and also less dependent on lots of training data. Anyway, that's a little bit about embodied AI to make AI more practical, more broadly applicable. So let's move on to the third theme here, which is about the all-important trust we can have in AI, right? So this is about making sure that AI is compliant with the regulations, like the European Union's AI Act, but also many other regions have their regulations regarding the responsible use of AI to make sure that AI is becoming more transparent, it is fair, it's not biased or discriminating, etc. Right? So this is about also importantly about improving the accuracy, the reliability of AI. So that's what we're going to talk about under theme 3. And one of the most important trends in that area is known as composite and neuro-symbolic AI. And it may sound a bit complex, but really it's not that complex. It's really about recognizing that if you have a hammer, maybe everything looks like a nail, but in reality, there are also other tools. Even if you have different kinds of hammers in your toolbox, like a large language model, which, as the name implies, would be a big hammer, or another trend, by the way, is to have more domain specific or small language models that are trained, created by using a more domain specific, more curated, higher quality data set, which helps to improve the accuracy of the language model in a particular domain. And we even have LLMs emerging that can be deployed, that are small enough to be deployed on edge devices, right? So anyway, these are all hammers of a kind, but the thing is that there is much more in the average AI toolbox than hammers. That's what composite AI is about. It's about recognizing that AI is actually a bigger toolbox with multiple tools, multiple techniques in it, right? And one of the most well-known at the moment is deep learning and foundation models and LLMs. But actually, there are more things that relate to AI, like, for example, data science, machine learning to make predictive models, the use of knowledge graphs or causal graphs, the use of rules, even good old-fashioned rules, as they're also known, or optimization algorithms. Anyway, to cut a long story short, AI is much more than only GenAI. That's something to keep in mind. Why? Because, as we will see in a minute, there are many use cases out there that actually can benefit from one of those other techniques to make AI more trustworthy, because that's the whole point here, right? Now, in general, we can make a distinction in two categories of AI techniques. One is data-driven AI, the one that you know so well, like neural networks and deep learning. And then there is the other flavor, which has been around for much longer actually. It's also known as symbolic AI, but it's where we take human knowledge as a starting point rather than data as a starting point. So we take knowledge, we acquire knowledge from human experts or human subject matter experts and bring that knowledge, formalize the knowledge in models so that AI can reason with that knowledge. That's in essence what knowledge-driven AI is about. So depending on the use case, depending on the conditions, certain of these techniques make sense or not, right? So one example to clarify that comes from a company in the energy sector that have field engineers, right? Field engineers go out there and do inspection or maintenance of assets in their installations, right? Now, never mind the details, but this example is about helping these people that are out there to find the right information more quickly, right? So they need, for instance, if they visit a site where there is some equipment and they want to, I don't know, maybe they want to figure out what is the maintenance history of this equipment, or maybe they want to know what are the safety protocols or what are the instructions to I don't know, to open it up and to do some maintenance, whatever, right? They need information. But that information, however, needs to be super reliable, right? Because you know what happens if the information is wrong? That as you can guess introduces significant safety risk and also financial risk, by the way, if things go wrong. So that information reliability is of great importance. Now, just offering these people then some chatbot that maybe right 60, 70, 80% of the time is not good enough, right? Because then it means that in 30, 40, 20% of the time it's wrong, which is unacceptable from a safety perspective alone. So one of the ways to improve this, and I'm not saying it's perfect yet, but it's improving at least, is to use composite AI. That's why we are talking about this example, right? So in this diagram on the left, you can see that the question from the field engineer is received and processed by a large language model. But importantly, the large language model is not allowed, is not implemented to create its own answer, because it can be hallucinating, it can be wrong, can be outdated, what have you. So rather than doing that, the LLM takes the question from the engineer and transforms that basically into a knowledge graph query, which was made by this company to represent, to have a structured overview of all the key concepts and how they relate to each other, and then also how they connect to the underlying documents. And these documents are not just any document, they're a pre-selection of quality controlled, vetted documents of the right version containing the right information, so that whatever the engineer gets as a response is based on the documents, right? The selection of documents that based on this selection seems to be the most relevant to the job at hand. There's more to be said about this example, but the key point I'm trying to make here for you is that here's a combination of a large language model and a knowledge graph. That is what we call composite AI. We're not relying on a single technique, we're combining, we're composing multiple techniques into one solution to improve its trustworthiness. That's the key here. Anyway, so that's an example. What else? Well, um, if you really want to know, there is a special flavor of composite AI that is known as neuro-symbolic AI. Now that sounds pretty fascinating, perhaps, right? Neuro-symbolic, but it's in essence it's about combining what we call neural or neuro techniques like deep learning or neural networks in general on the one hand, with symbolic AI techniques like a knowledge graph or a rule or whatever on the other hand. So this is the aim of this approach, is to really combine those two and then to harvest, to create, well, let me rephrase that, to create a synergy where we use the power of neural networks for pattern recognition, and they can be trained using loads of data, as you know, but then combine that with the benefits like transparency and solid reasoning capabilities of the symbolic approach. And the hope is, the aim is to, to combine those benefits together. That's one of the holy grails at the moment at cutting edge research of AI, is to bring AI to this level where we combine the benefits and overcome some of the most important limitations of the current generation of AI. So that's a little bit about neuro-symbolic AI. Now, moving on to what is already the last trend in this presentation, which is about AI guardrails, or in essence, the use of AI to validate other AI. Now, AI guardrails are basically about making sure that despite the progress that we're seeing with agents, with embodied AI, with composite AI, with small language models, with retrieval, augmented generation, and you name it, a long list of things that we are doing to improve AI and to make it less risky to use. Despite all of that, we still need to be aware that also in 2025, and I'm sure also in the years after, AI will still have risks and limitations that need to be mitigated, right? So here are a few, and I'm sure you heard about several of those already. But the essence here is that in addition to all the things we already talked about, we still need to have governance and risk management. And the good news is that now there is a increasingly availability of what we call guardrails. Now, guardrails conceptually are not very complex, right? There is a situation, as you can see on the left-hand side here, without guardrails, where there is no filter, there is unfiltered interaction between users or other systems on the one hand, and AI on the other hand. And what guardrails basically do, in essence, is to put a filter in between, right? To say, before we share this output with the user, let's do a validation, right? Let's apply some rules, for example, to see if there is any toxic words in it, or maybe we want to use some keyword checking, or maybe we want to check before we share data with perhaps an AI service on the public internet. Maybe we want to validate the input and make sure that our user is not sharing any confidential or privacy sensitive data with the AI service, right? So different use cases where guardrails may play a role. There are even situations now where we're using large language models to validate the output of other large language models, right? So that so you may say that sounds good, great, but there are even situations where the same LLM is used to validate its own output. It's also known as self-reflection, which, well, in my opinion, sounds way too anthropomorphic. But basically, it's also a bit tricky, right? To use the same AI to validate its own output. That is not, in general, not something I would recommend. But still, could be useful. Don't get me wrong; it's useful, but it also brings me to the limitation of guardrails as we know them today. So yes, they're powerful. Yes, they become more and more available. But then, of course, we should always wonder, if we're using AI to validate AI, how are we going to validate the AI that we're using to validate other AI? Or in other words, who is guarding the guardrails? This recursive problem doesn't mean that we shouldn't use guardrails. Don't get me wrong, right? I think guardrails are very interesting to use, to have something to make sure that at least filter out the most extreme misbehavior or faulty output of AI. But it's not in itself enough, it's not good enough to blindly rely upon, right? Or in other words, for proper AI governance, for proper AI risk management, guardrails are not a replacement, but rather an addition, right? So if you start using guardrails Great, but don't forget that you also need to take care of all the other things you need for your governance and risk management, like having policies, having guidelines, having creating awareness amongst people about the risks and other things you're supposed to be doing to comply and to make sure you're using AI in a responsible fashion. And with that, we come to the end of this part of the session. Afterwards, in a minute, we'll have time for Q&A. So don't go away yet. But this is the high-level overview, right? So we have looked at 3 themes and 6 trends that together, that work together to basically enable a next generation of AI systems that we aim, or that we hope will be more reliable, more robust, more transparent, more autonomous, more safe, and more responsible. Right? So AI is far from over. It's only just getting started. So what does it mean for you, having heard all of this, right? So here are some recommendations. First of all, make sure that you create value from your AI, right? By, amongst others, by taking what we call a human-first approach, emphasizing the importance of AI literacy, of educating people. Also by focusing on the augmentation or automation of specific decisions rather than using this shotgun approach, right? Rather than using AI as a sort of general purpose tool. The second thing I would like you to remember from this session is that we should broaden the applicability of AI by also considering things like AI agents, or even start exploring at least embodied AI to make AI more practical, to apply AI to create even to enable even more automation than we can today. But then of course, all of that should go hand in hand with having AI that is sufficiently trustworthy, right? To improve the trust we can have in AI, we need to think about things like combining AI techniques. We should not only rely on GenAI. We may want to combine your AI with rules or knowledge graphs or other techniques that help to improve the transparency, the reasoning, and the overall accuracy of AI. And also by using guardrails, as I mentioned. But overall, it's clear that AI, as I mentioned, is far from over, right? This is changing almost on a daily basis, right? So it means that if you haven't got a strategy already, and if you haven't, I would highly recommend to develop your strategy to go beyond piloting experimentation. But also, once you have a strategy, do not consider it to be a given. Recalibrate your AI strategy periodically, depending on the trends that you keep on your radar, because new things are happening, and they may be a good reason to say, okay, let's go back to a drawing board and think about how we go about AI in our organization. And with that, thank you very much for your time. Rishika, back to you, and then we'll have some time for questions.
Great. Thank you, Peter, for sharing your insights. We have time to take some questions now. Please continue to submit your questions and thoughts in the Ask the Speaker box. And remember to rate the session. To submit your rating, locate the rate session link below the player. A box will open for you to select 1 to 5 hearts. Please note that 5 hearts is the top rating. Share your feedback on the insights provided in the Leave Further feedback box and click Send. Before we get to Q&A, here are some resources to take you deeper into the topic. Access more research-backed insights to master your role and transform your business at a Gartner conference. Visit gartner.com/cal for a full list of upcoming Gartner conferences. Additionally, we invite you to download the Gartner 2025 CIO Agenda, your guide to the leadership, organizational, and technology priorities CIOs must address in 2025. Gartner recently released a new framework that will help you set the right pace for your AI race so you can achieve the desired business, technology, and behavioral outcomes for your organization. Get the guidance you need to achieve your AI goals at scale. You can download the research by clicking the button on this slide. Follow us on social media and get the latest insights and trends. If you want to learn more on how Gartner can help you achieve your mission critical priorities, contact us via the methods on this slide. You can download these resources from the bottom of the page. Plus, you can find more Gartner insights, access the presentation slides, and see upcoming and on-demand webinars at gartner.com/webinars. Okay, Peter, over to you to address the questions
Thank you,
now.
Rishika. And I just had a look at the questions. Thank you so much for asking them. There are some great questions in the list. So I'm not sure where to start, so why not start right from the top, right? So the first two questions that I have here on my screen, as asked by some people in the audience, relate to roles and skills. Right. So one question is, what skills or roles will be most in demand as AI adoption accelerates, and how can professionals future-proof their careers? And the second question relates to that. What are the kind of skills profiles anticipated to run an in-house AI center of excellence? Now, to answer that question briefly, because we also want to have time for the other questions here, I think by top of mind, at least in my mind, are the roles like, of course, you need a head of AI. You need AI requires coordination. It requires collaboration between different disciplines. Requires all kinds of capabilities. That all of that needs to be coordinated and orchestrated, and therefore you need someone who's taking care of all that coordination. That's a full-time job on average. Then also, increasingly we see good results from having a more technical AI architect, someone who is not, only has knowledge about a single AI technique, like only machine learning or only LLMs, but someone who has a broader experience and can also, can provide guidance and make decisions on how to go about the implementation of your AI initiative, right? Whether that is buy or build, and if it's build, which techniques then are the most suitable to implement your use case. And then maybe a third role I should mention is often overlooked, is the need to have someone in your team that have the skills to deploy, to integrate, to operate, to monitor AI. It's also known as operationalization of AI. Doing pilots and proof of concept is fine, nothing wrong with that. But hopefully, at some point, some of those pilots or initiatives need to go into production. They need to be scaled. And that's not a given. How do you do that? Right? How do you offer support? How do you monitor those solutions? How do you integrate them with other systems? So that's another key role at the minimum that needs to be there. Even if you're working with external partners, you still need to have this core team in your organization, at least at some point, to take care of the things that I just mentioned. And also regarding, there's also a question about professionals, how they could future-proof their careers. Well, I think one key advice here is to not become a one-trick pony, right? It means that things are moving fast, so don't get stuck in is of the essence, right? All right, so let's see what other questions are there. I realize I can't answer all the questions, but let me see. Yeah, so here's a question about, which I think is very interesting, is how is this current post-LLM era of decision intelligence different from foundational decision intelligence? Now, I think what the person asking this question is alluding to is that, and quite rightfully, is that decision intelligence has been around for some years now, also before the world became aware of the existence of GenAI and large language models. So what has changed? Well, I think to a large extent, decision intelligence is still a key approach, as I argued during the presentation, to focus the use of AI on specific decisions, to make it more impactful, more valuable, as I mentioned. But then what has changed recently is that basically the toolbox to support, augment, or automate decisions has grown. It has grown with the use of large language models, but also AI agents. However, we need to be careful especially in more riskful decision making, to start overly relying on LLMs, because we all know that we can't always trust LLMs, right? They can be very useful, don't get me wrong, but it's not like if we want to make an important decision that may have significant financial or other kind of risks, well, maybe not blindly rely on an LLM yet. So what it means is that often today we see that GenAI is used to, especially in the case where humans are still making the decision, that LLMs are great in providing additional context. So rather than only providing some quantitative data about a customer or product or whatever, um, this GenAI can help to enrich the understanding, the situational awareness of the decision making. That's one great use case that we see of LLMs in the context of decision making. Or AI agents, which is still, really cutting edge at the moment in the context of decision intelligence, could be like, well, maybe sometimes we know in advance how we're going to make a decision, but sometimes because of disruptions, because of dynamics, we're not quite sure in advance how we're going to make this decision. So agents can also be used to create a decision flow on the fly, to make decision making more dynamic and more adaptive. Anyway, let me stop there and spend time on the other questions too. Um, yeah, so there's another question here. How do we really differentiate normal automation offering versus agent processing, as in theory, doing some sort of digital automation? What is the difference? I think it says. Right? Anyway, so basically, this is an important question. Also, the context of agent washing. Remember that conventional automation all of a sudden is called agentic AI, just because it sells better, right? I guess. But anyway, the point is that there is, I think, it is important to realize that AI agents, although promising, also have their own issues. Right? I don't want to spoil the party, but already today we see AI agent implementations dealing or being challenged with things like, is it really reliable enough, right? If it's too open-ended, maybe the execution plan generated by an LLM is not quite what we were looking for. And how do we validate that? Um, how do we know what are the risks? And maybe we should have a human in the loop to validate that. Or still another challenge is the cost, right? If agents are massively calling LLMs, and if those LLMs have token-based pricing, how do you stay in control of the costs of the use of the bigger use of AI agents? So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that AI agents are powerful, but they're not to be applied as a sort of general purpose solution, and to do things that you could perfectly do already with cheaper, more reliable conventional automation. So in general, and this is also where we're going to publish a new research note about soon, is that there are specific characteristics like, for example, a dynamic context, a certain complexity level of the task, that every time the task is executed may be slightly or completely different. Those are indicators that, if you find them, may imply that you need to use an AI agent and cannot rely on conventional automation. Anyway, more is to come in this publication. If you're a Gartner client, you will find that on the website pretty soon. If you can't find it, let me know. Okay. So what is the other questions here? Okay, here's another interesting question, completely different topic, but still related, of course. What are your thoughts on the AI Act in Europe, the European Union, and the need for workers using AI to be educated about it? Is that feasible in 2025? Well, yes, it must be feasible, because actually one of the paragraphs, and I'm not a legal guy, right? We don't provide legal advice, so disclaimers, by, um, keep in mind that that in the AI Act there is a section that talks about AI literacy, and it sort of talks about the need to educate your people to use AI in a responsible fashion. Now, again, I'm not a legal expert, so it remains to be seen how exactly we should interpret that particular section. But even without the EU AI Act, organizations do very well in investing in AI literacy, because we also see in our research that also their own policies are better complied with if we educate people in how to interpret those policies and how to apply them in practice in their specific individual role. And also, if that's not enough, we also see that literacy, the education of people in the use of AI, really helps to make AI, as I mentioned before, much more impactful and therefore also more valuable. Now, there are things to be said about how AI literacy should be addressed. Clearly, you can't educate the entire organization in one go unless you have a very small organization. But in general, you need a plan, you need a roadmap for which there is a separate Gartner publication, if you're interested. It's called the Roadmap for AI Literacy Programs, where you can use as a starting point to figure out what is the best way of setting up your AI literacy program in your organization. All right, so maybe time for one more question. Um, Let me see. Yeah, there's so many great questions. Sorry, I can't answer all of that. How about artificial general intelligence, AGI? Does AGI still need human intelligence? Well, the very short answer, AGI, as we define it, is nowhere near. AI is getting more powerful, more broadly applicable, but in practice, we hardly see that AI is powerful enough to replace people. So yes, we still need human intelligence, very much so. We are rather skeptical about claims about AGI, although of course it depends very much on how you define AGI, right? This kind of intelligence, this AI being at the same level of humans, well, that's a big ask. But if we water that definition down to something more practical, more feasible, well, if that's your definition, then of course AGI is within reach. But if we keep the original definition where AI is able to do things at the same level as humans across a very broad spectrum of tasks, then, well, we're not there yet. So, yes, we will need intelligence, human intelligence, very much in the years to come. And with that, back to you, Rushika. We're out of time, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing your insights. And to our audience, before you go, just a quick reminder, you can download the presentation slides and other resources from the bottom of the page. Please also rate this session and share feedback on the insights provided. To submit your rating, click Rate Session below the player. A box will open for you to select 1 to 5 hearts. Please note that 5 hearts is the top rating. Share your feedback on the insights provided in the Leave Further feedback box and click Send. All right, with that, I would like to again thank our presenter and, of course, thank you for joining us. Have a